Hello, and welcome to the Overly Animated Podcast, where we take animation seriously. We talk everything animation here, including Adventure Time Distant Lands, which we'll be talking about today. I'm your host, Alex Bonilla, and today I'm joined by Dylan Heisen.
Hello.
Michelle Anderer.
Hello.
And Ali Martin.
Hi.
As mentioned, today we are discussing Adventure Time Distant Lands, the new...
I thought the show ended.
It did a while ago. If you've been listening to Overly Animated, you know that the last time we talked Adventure Time in depth was the Come Along With Me finale, which I think is over a year ago at this point, maybe longer. I should have that in front of me. But anyway, since then we've been in hiatus, but now we have Distant Lands, which is a series of around 45-minute specials that are going to be on HBO Max. And we'll be discussing the first of those that have been released, which is focused on BMO. And you can find more on our previous Adventure Time coverage at overlyanimated.com if you want to catch up on our thoughts while the show was running on television and not on streaming services. You can also subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app by searching for Overly Animated. And you can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/overlyanimated. But yeah, we are gathered here today to discuss our little robot friend BMO, and discuss what are our initial feelings about this new road for Adventure Time, a show that went on for many years, many seasons, and is taking a new approach as we enter the age of streaming. So we'll begin with initial thoughts and then work from there on more specific topics. But let's go to Dylan first. In general, what were your thoughts watching this the BMO special?
So I didn't have like the highest expectations, I feel like, for the BMO special. I like BMO, but I don't know if this would have been my top pick for immediate Adventure Time special. So I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen here. But I was really impressed. I really like this episode of Adventure Time, Distant Lands, whatever. Like, I thought this worked really, really well. Like, it was just a great story. It was standalone. I mean, they connected to some elements of the show. BMO was a really good protagonist. I thought this was very gorgeous, like a step up production quality from the high standards of Adventure Time before. I was really happy having Adventure Time back. I feel like the special captured what makes Adventure Time Adventure Time. It was quirky. It was funny. But it was also just like this great kind of standalone story. And I had the new characters. I love Y5. I love the drift. The drift. Yeah. And then the setting of it. So I was really, really happy with this. Really positive about the special.
Okay, starting off strong. Thank you, Dylan. Let's go to Ali next. How are you feeling about the special?
Well, kind of pretty much the same. Like, I mean, I did watch Adventure Time back in the day, but I wasn't the hugest stan because a lot of it did feel like it kind of dragged, at least for certain episodes. So I wasn't really optimistic about the 45-minute special format initially. I think they've handled it really well, and I think it succeeded, especially even in the first episode, although I wasn't like super invested in anything past Y5 or BMO. But I also really enjoyed it. I think what is to come is going to be more entertaining, probably I don't know, there might be like a lack of references to the original series, and I kind of hope there is, because I agree with what Dylan said. It works really well as like standalone with new characters. And yeah, the production is obviously a huge step up, which I don't know why I didn't expect it, but it's nice to see. And it really does feel like the original show, even without like everybody, even though Jake and Finn come in at the end, it didn't need them to feel like the Adventure Time universe. I want to know more about the service droid, though. I mean, we'll get into it, but I do have questions.
Okay. And we will definitely talk a little bit more about like how effective this is for someone like really into Adventure Time and people who are more being introduced to the lore. Michelle, I believe that you're also in the camp of like not that into Adventure Time lore. So like how are your general feelings coming into this special?
I like Adventure Time, but I've only seen about half of it, plus the finale, just because I found out about Bubbly and I was like, I gotta see the culmination. But I mean, I do think this works really good as a standalone. I was constantly wondering, like, are some of these characters references to things I should know about if I were deeper in the fandom of Adventure Time? But like, I agree with Ali and Dylan that like, Y5 is such a great character. BMO's always a champ. And the Drift itself as a location that we spend so much time in is really enjoyable. I think they did, even though like we don't see a ton of it, there are enough like areas that are different and enough people like with different kinds of jobs, like the Bugs and like Hugo certainly. And like you get this sense of like what the current environment and the hierarchies and how like socially everything sort of fits together in this like colony that's almost on the brink of devastation. And that's just a really cool kind of sci-fi thing to get into. And I feel like this definitely felt way more sci-fi than what I remember from the show.
Now I'm kind of annoyed with myself that I didn't think of that, because that's a good point.
It's like, because what I remember about Adventure Time is like, it's more about like the fun, wacky adventures, but then it gets like a lot more existential later. Yeah. But like this just like went hard into sci-fi in a way that I think is pretty exciting, because I don't know how often Adventure Time's really gone that hard into it before, and maybe they did in later seasons. But like honestly, the Drift itself as a location was one of the things I was surprised as much as I ended up liking it. And I will echo like the animation, the caliber is very on display with this. Like for whatever reason, like a lot of like seeing Wi-Fi emote as I'm pretty sure it's a girl bunny, right? I can't remember anyone's gender.
Let's go with that.
I'll guess that Wi-Fi is female, but like a lot of times she'd be like running through a location and you just see this like concernedness in her face, or like the way she was expressing herself is very like fluid but like interesting and just like clean, and just I don't know, I haven't seen anything quite that smooth in a while. And just the backgrounds were so gorgeous and colorful. I think especially that plant room comes to mind, like that really felt like something special. So like honestly, like BMO Y5 amazing. I kind of love the giant hefty bunny mom. Like she was pretty cool too. But the like environment itself of the Drift I think was like my favorite part.
I feel like gender on Adventure Time can be pretty fluid and open. I feel like BMO's the best example of that.
Well,
right?
yes.
Like,
even though he's referred to as a boy, which is
like exclusively a boy in this, but I swear I remember them calling BMO he in some episodes and she in other episodes.
I did research.
Casually.
That's confirmed. Gender
So
pronouns have changed over the years.
Because like this is like a prequel essentially for BMO, right? So maybe that's like how that makes sense. I don't know.
I think I saw Adam recently referring to BMO as they. So maybe it's all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, the show has bounced around a lot on that topic, but yeah, coming back to the general discussion on BMO, I will say that I agree with all you guys that like it works really well as a standalone, and I find it just like a very interesting intro, because like even for someone who like I have watched every Adventure Time episode, but like it's interesting that this episode doesn't expect you to have done that. Like there's very little that would that's like that you would miss entirely if you had not watched an Adventure Time episode.
I think basically nothing.
Yeah, there's one character that like you have a better idea of if you've watched the show, but within the special, talking about Mr. M, like it does enough to establish what kind of character that is, and overall, like everyone is very very established very quickly. Like we mentioned, like Y5, like you immediately get her deal, you get the deal of this society. Coming to crumbles. It's a classic sci-fi tale, but with the Adventure Time spin. And I think it's notable that that I think Michelle mentioned, like the key tenets of Adventure Time are wacky hijinks and existentialism, and we still get that in this special. So like that helps it to like feel Adventure Timey, even though we're in an entirely different setting. So like I really love this direction. I think that this is the best possible use of if you wanted to start your debut in the new system with BMO, I think this is the best case scenario it could have gone. Like put him in a totally different setting and just to go wild. So I really enjoyed this. It definitely feels on par with the better Adventure Time episodes during the show. We can talk a little bit more about like just the general format of it. This is of 45 minutes. Come Along With Me, the Adventure Time finale was about that length as well. Other than that, like Adventure Time historically has been 11-minute episodes. So I'm curious, Dylan, do you have any thoughts on if this, on how this, this premise sustained for 44 minutes? If you feel anything compared to the usual Adventure Time fare?
Yeah, what I want to compare it to, I feel like, is the miniseries, because I think this is kind of a similar concept to the miniseries format that they went to a few times towards the end of Adventure Time's run. And I thought this worked even better than the miniseries did. Like, I thought the miniseries were really good on Adventure Time. And it, like, when you have more episodes, it maybe you can get into more depth on things, but like the consequence of a TV season versus a movie is, you have to do various that you can't, you have a main story, then you'll have to add other stuff in to kind of fill it out too. But with the special format, it's just really focused. And like this like worked, and there's like no fluff, no like episodes I wasn't as into from some of the miniseries. This was just like straight, like great, exciting from start to finish. I'm very excited about this as a format moving forward. I mean, thinking about the bubbling special next, like it's like, oh, only 45 minutes, but I'm like, that's great. That feels like a great format. You can just get straight into bubbling emotional depth of start to finish like that. That sounds great to me.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison to the miniseries, because like when I like just as an example, like Islands, right? Like Islands, you have to do Finn and Jake going to the islands in the present. You fit in the flashback with Susan Strong. Mm-hmm. You fit in flashback with the
like
with
a sea
Finn's
monster
parents.
Or something,
right? So like you're like do it because it's in the style of a miniseries. It's like each episode has its own premise, but like that's different from a special like this, where like it's one continuous story all the way through, and you're like focusing on building the main characters. So like I don't think that there's one that's better than the other. Like as you mentioned, like the miniseries are impressive in their own right, stakes especially. But like I agree that like this particular format, what it does is it keeps you focused on one story, and so like in that sense, it lets you get invested in these new characters a lot quicker than you would maybe if you had to like balance the new characters with the old characters like you would have done in the miniseries age. Ali or Michelle, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the longer length here.
I kind of feel like I was skeptical about it just because I thought it would drag like a lot of episodes that are kind of fillery of Adventure Time, but I think I agree with Dylan. It was done almost in a way better than the miniseries, but it's hard to compare the two, honestly. I also really love the miniseries. Like Stakes and Islands are probably my two standout, for lack of a better term, episodes in the whole series. But I think they did this really well, and I'm really excited for what's to come later. Because I mean, I didn't really enjoy this as much watching it through the first time, but like I definitely have to watch it again because I didn't even think we're going to get into your note about capitalism and colonialism, but that was also. Yeah. Like, I'm annoyed that I didn't think of it because that's my jam when cartoons reference that kind of thing. I mean, just to rephrase, capitalism and colonialism are not my jam, but seeing cartoons talk about it.
I was going to say, but
to clarify, I apologize.
We'll dig into that, but I do want to since this is probably going to keep coming up, I should mention that the other three specials that are coming up, Wizard City about Peppermint Butler, Together Again will be Finn and Jake in the future, and the one that's upcoming, that's next up, is titled Obsidian on Princess Bubblegum and Marceline the Vampire Queen. Obviously, and I do feel that in general among the Adventure Time fandom, that one is the anticipated one. So like this in that. We also are kind of viewing BMO as like the prep towards that, or like what are like kind of setting our expectations, right? So like, would you say, Michelle, would you say your expectations are lowered or heightened by BMO now that we have the standard there?
heightened on its own versus what's coming up, or
Like, are you more or less excited, or about the same excited for Obsidian now that you've watched the BMO special?
I mean, probably more, just because, like, I guess, like, none of us really knew how much, and again, there's a lot of Adventure Time I haven't seen, but this does, from what I remember, feel a lot like, the show did, so I feel like that makes me feel a lot more confident that whatever we get later is gonna feel just as true to the original show. And, like, that's a nice feeling. I remember feeling that way about Future. I was like, oh man, like, I know there's gonna be, like, half the crew is gonna be different, and is it gonna be, and it is, like, different, but it's still kind of the same in a way. So I feel sort of similarly about this. I don't think I've seen any of the miniseries, so I can't speak to that, but I do think the length of this helps me appreciate just, like, the environment in a way that I feel like sometimes, maybe if you're somebody who works on, like, backgrounds in a show, you spend a lot of time making something look really cool, and then you spend like 5 seconds in it for plot reasons because you only have an 11-minute episode and there's a lot you have to get through. But because we spend so much time in pretty much one location outside of space at the beginning, I feel like that really helps me, like, even, like, get more mad at Hugo, honestly. Because, like, the more you get to know all the people that live there, and you don't, like, really get to know anyone but Y5, but even so, it's like, yeah, he, like, totally just, like, invaded it, like, took all the resources, destroyed everything, and then just yeeted. And I also, like, this is tangentially related, but, like, did he destroy the Earth, or did he just leave when it became unsustainable? It's unclear, but maybe he legit destroyed the Earth, and that's a crazy info drop if so, because we always wondered how the Earth, like, got giant chonker, like, craters in it and stuff, and was it Hugo all along? Like, that's what I wonder now.
I assume they would have said if he was more involved in them, like, that would have been a big thing if he was heavily involved in starting the Mushroom War. Yeah. But it's an interesting theory. Like, I don't think that, having seen the show, I don't think there's, like, a no to that, right? Like, it's possible.
Right, like, I think that flashback
talking about him.
Yeah, I think that flashback is vague enough that, like, you could, build a fanfic out of that.
Yeah, like, he took part in building the bomb that, like, destroyed everything.
That's what the knockoff BMO was saying, right? That, like, because she knows him from way back, and she's like, oh yeah, like, this is pretty much what he did with Earth. He left when it was unsustainable, and then he went to this new colony, and now he's leaving that when it becomes unsustainable. But it's, like, partially because of him that things get worse. So I assumed, like, that applied to Earth also. But it is a little unclear, but I wonder, man, like,
I wonder where this colony even came from if they're not from Earth, because clearly they're, like, different species, and
well,
I don't know. It's supposed to be a spaceship, right? This isn't.
There's also bunny people in Ooh, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, there is.
There's bunnies and, like, pointy-eared people.
Kind of unclear how anything really connects.
Well, and this lets us get a little bit into the main story of this special, right? And, like, the overarching thing is this new society, the Drift, that we're introduced to. And eventually, by the end, we get, like, the story of how it comes to be with Hugo, right? And we get into, like, stuff not only with capitalism, like, he is kind of portrayed as this kind of, like similar to billionaires who only act for their own interests, but also, like, there's sprinkling of colonialism too. Like, during the flashback, they talk about, like, adopting the aliens, bio stuff, and then later killing them off. So, like, you get this mixture here. The ending of this happens pretty quickly. Like, by the time, like, Y5, like, reveals the plans to everybody, there's, like, 5 minutes left in the episode. But I'm curious, Dylan, how do you feel about the effectiveness of the overall plots going on in this episode?
Yeah, I think I have a take on, like, the plot structure. So I think it's, like, kind of a typical plot thing where it's like the character believes in this person and authority, and then they discover that things aren't as right, and and then they expose it. But what I liked about this was initially Y5 only figures that Mr. M is the evil one. Like, Y5 has such faith in Hugo, in the authority figure, that even when like something really should point back to Hugo, she still thinks it's Mr. M, and she's like, and there's like a second reveal that that Hugo's the evil one. And I feel like this is like that. This really thematically resonated with me in speaking to like how much like faith authority figures can command, and how much he was kind of like this religious figure for everyone in the drift. So like I think the special did a good job of like having a familiar plot structure, which I think it needed, considering it's introducing a completely new story and resolving it in 45 minutes while having like interesting twist on it.
All right. I actually, well, like the first watch, I was a little bit, I was a little bit pessimistic on it. Like, this is a bit of a simplistic story overall. Like, as you, this is a common sci-fi trope, but like, I think that you have a good take on it. That there is at least a little bit of progression in terms of like we start with Mr. M being the focus, and later it switches to Hugo. So that's at least a little bit extra on top of it. Ali, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned that capitalism and colonialism are your jam, apparently. So, like,
I didn't really consider it too much watching this because it did feel kind of like everything we've seen in a lot of shows, cartoons, live action, what have you. But I also, I do think Dylan has a point. Like the second reveal does make it sort of stronger for it, and I like that. Also, I mean, you can see with her parents that like the influence also stems from them. Like that's how she was raised. But then they also changed their minds in the episode, which I kind of wasn't expecting. Like, you know, at the beginning, you're like, wow, you guys kind of like suck. You're not listening to her. You're pushing her aside. This is textbook semi-toxic parenting. And then they also, you know, they come to realize that she's right and they accept it, which is not that you don't see it a lot in animation, but you don't see it a lot in real life. So it was a nice thing. And they call her Y5 in the end instead of Y4, which also made me happy.
Yeah, I feel like it's like there's that plot structure, but there's also all the Y5 character stuff, which is a lot. And then there's the backstory for Hugo that we get into, and then just like the action plot with BMO going on. So I feel like, you know, it's familiar, but it's also in the context of a lot of other things going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Michelle, what are your thoughts on the story going on?
Well, I mean, I agree with Dylan that it seems like there's multiple layers with different characters, which for 45 minutes makes sense that you'd want to try to balance those things so that nothing gets too, like, you know, convoluted, but still like interesting enough that nothing feels like it's dragging. I definitely didn't feel like there were any segments that felt slow, which sometimes can happen when you stretch something from a format you're not used to working in. I keep thinking about how much I dislike Hugo. I'm trying to like, because like what Dylan said, I thought was really well put. And I think like one of the things that really stuck out to me is like when you're introduced to Mr. M, and like, I don't know who Mr. M is, and I'm trying to remember who he was in this episode. Like he's the red guy, right? Who's like in the car all the time. Okay. He's the red guy. So like when he's introduced, like he just like he seems so creepy. He pulls up in this car. He like hardly ever gets out of the car initially. He looks like the epitome of the like don't talk to strangers kind of person who's just talking to you through a window, trying to get you to like do something for him. And when we first meet Hugo, it's in this lab, and he is so polite and easygoing, and it's almost like you don't expect him to be in charge because he looks like a regular guy and he acts like a regular guy. He doesn't act like he's in control. There's no like gravitas to that introduction for him, which I think like is a really great like deceptive way to put you at ease with him, and probably how he's been able to worm his way into getting so much control with all these people that he has essentially colonized. But I think like the thing that really like got under my skin was like when Y5 is calling him out, and she has like the blueprint from BMO that BMO downloaded showing like all the areas that have been destroyed as a result of collecting these special items for the ship pod thing. And Hugo like doesn't deny it. He's like, yeah, that's right, I did it. And he's like, if anyone was offended by my actions, I am truly, and then he just like leaves, but he was gonna say I'm truly sorry. And the thing that really bothered me about that is it's like so perfect of a way to like point at like so many problematic people in charge of companies right now when they're finally called out about being terrible people. That's literally what they say. They say, oh, like I didn't intend like any of this. Mm-hmm. If anyone's offended by what happened, like I am so sorry, and like all my sympathies to the people who were hurt. Like it's not like my fault because I didn't try to do this intentionally. And I was like, wow, like what an interesting thing to like just give a line to a character that's very specifically viewed in a negative light by us as viewers. And so like it just felt very interesting, and I just really hate Hugo, but I love the way he was handled in this episode because like yeah, a lot of language like that just feels very like of a now sort of moment, you know? Like there are a lot of people like that are facing reckonings, and that is like the defense they use. So who also seem like perfectly nice, amiable, like normal looking people. But yeah. So I don't know. This turned into a Hugo rant, but I just I don't know. I haven't seen a character like Hugo in a while, right? Like a lot of villains are pretty like, oh, they look sketchy. It's because they are sketchy. Gotta get rid of them. But that's really not how he was presented, so...
And then when they're confronted about their sketchiness, they tiptoe around it, but he owns it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we had another Hugo villain recently. So
yes, we did.
No, I love that part when he's like, I'm trying, and then he sticks the thing in. He doesn't even finish. He doesn't even try to be like, oh, nope, I wasn't sorry. No, he's just like practically like, that was a distraction. Then he runs in.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it usually goes a different way, and I feel like that really fits Hugo. And, like, even when he's, like, revealed and he's in the ship, he doesn't seem so despicable. And, yeah, yeah, that's, like, kind of the hard part. And I could see why that would, like, make you hate him even more. Yeah.
Like, even the service droid forgived him, so I guess...
Olive pats him on the shoulder when, like, you have a moment right before that where he's alone in the ship, and it's like, maybe he regrets everything. But then Olive comes to comfort him, and maybe it's because they have a past history, but that kind of ambiguity just like bothers me even more because it's like well, I still don't like him, but like I don't know what he deserves.
But it bothers you in a good way.
Yeah, like because it like forces you to like sit in that unresolvedness.
I feel like he's more realistic. Like he's not mustached twirling, you know. Like he's still like charismatic, and he's still there's not like pure evil with him. But he did these horrible like actions. I feel like he is really analogous to a lot of people in our world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do y'all think he ended up on Mars? Just digging.
I think he ended up floating in the void of space with his Olive friend.
But
I think Olive has more to do than...
I love Olive. I forgot its name.
Olive
but she's my favorite.
Also, like speaking to the now factor, one thing that I did think was kind of unique about this this plot was that the Hugo mats, which are like the machines that create stuff, like the thing that's so evil about them when Wi-Fi discovers it is that they're like harvesting data without anybody knowing, and like so like the whole idea of like privacy concerns being like a problem like that feels kind of new, and like I'm glad that
it was too relevant. I have to watch it again.
I also just love 3D printing vending machines. I'm sure that's somewhere. I'm sure that's from something, but I don't even remember if I've seen it before. Like that's like, yeah, I feel like that is exactly what's going to happen in the future.
We're going to be able to 3D print energy drinks and pizza, finally edible things.
Just gets a sports drink is the first thing to 3D print. Like,
yes.
How does 3D printing liquid work?
Is it? No, never mind. It's going to be like it's water 3D.
Wow.
I think so.
It's been a week.
Everything's made of atoms, so by that logic.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this is this whole thing is resolved by Y5 and BMO gathering the population of the drift together, and they eject him out into space. And then there's like a brief moment of like sorting out like what are we gonna do while we're stuck here, and it turns into this kind of like collective socialism thing where it's like, hey, we need to like manage our resources,
they expunge
teach each other things.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
They're gonna adopt socialism.
Yes.
It was very quick, and I was like, oh, okay. Like
this episode really catered to me, and I glossed over so much of it. I'm a little annoyed with myself about it.
But I do want to ask, like, at least for me, like this ending stuff like happened really fast to me. I don't know if I'm alone in that, or okay. Yeah. So.
No, it felt
I also like paused at that point. I saw there's 5 minutes left. For me, I thought it worked really well. I love the music during it. I thought that was like some of the best animation and music of the thing. I don't know if like the plot was so deep that they needed even more time to resolve anything. I could see why it felt fast. For me, it worked.
I think
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go
I was just
ahead,
saying,
go
like,
ahead.
the reason I think it feels fast is because we spend the majority establishing a lot of these characters at odds with each other. So the fact that they're all going to work together now, it's kind of like, really? But, like, it seems like they've been, like, kind of doing their own things for a while now. But I think the thing that makes it work is that this is, like, a moment of severe crisis for all of them. And in moments like that, you are a little more desperate and you are a little more likely to do things you don't normally want to do. So, like, in that way, it makes sense. But also, like, we spend a lot of time establishing that these people don't work together normally. So I think it kind of like, once it happens, it's like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. But like, while it's happening, I could see being a little like, oh really? Like, this is so fast though.
It's still
For me,
so
the one
relevant at
thing-
times.
Yeah, for me, the one thing at the end that felt like fast or didn't make as much sense to me was the parents forgiving Y5,
Yeah.
like right there. Because honestly, like these are some of the most despicable parents. We've had a lot of despicable parents, but
Thank
these
you.
I
these
don't
two
know
are
about that.
so bad for me. Like,
No, they were bad.
Why?
Her mom
Explain
pushes
this.
her away in the beginning just to get like stuff so she can get recognized. It's terrible.
like they really. I mean, I agree. The mom's like build and stuff, like it's appealing, but like they're really. I see what Michelle's saying. Like
She looks
Trying to-
great.
But
love her, but I hate her.
Yeah, no, I just really hated them, like way more than Hugo for me. But
Yeah,
so
true.
them like doing a 180 didn't make as much sense for me.
Okay, hang on though. I think one thing we might be forgetting is like when you're like an older adult, you become very conditioned to accept society for what it is, and you also become a lot more likely to like have a little disdain for people younger than you, especially if they're your children. So I feel like for them it was really just like everyone in the drip bought into Hugo's system, and he made it a system. Like I think there was a line somewhere where they say like Hugo's great as long as like you can do something for him, and they were exactly those people. Like that family scavenged for him because he made a system of rules where like if you're nice to him, he will help you out because he is the leader. That's just like how like the like social stuff works once he came there. So
But
it's like
that
the
should
parents,
not
it was
excuse their
like
actions.
no, but like I think it's like once they realized what was going on and how terrible it was, they did like change their
Yeah.
mind. They didn't double down. They were like, oh gosh, like High Five was right the whole time. Like, and they like showed remorse. I feel like honestly, like that's a little believable too. It's like their perspective was wrong and they did not great things, but like I don't think nearly as terrible as Hugo.
Well, yeah, I
As
think objectively,
parents,
and
not as characters.
Yeah, as parents, and we're emotionally invested in Wi-Fi. But no, you make a good point that they're that way because of the system that Hugo set up.
Yeah, like
And so you
everyone
remove
liked
that system. I think that's probably the point they're trying to make by having them change at the end. Is like
Yeah.
they're like, and it is believable to people like in our world who are bad, but that's just like what they grew up in. But you still don't like them. But like I feel like the thing that they displayed, the quality they displayed that made me hate them so much, and it's similar. Other characters in in their world also had this, was like the complete lack of empathy for non-human life, like like robot life, like just everyone trying to turn BMO off. Like I was really affected by that. Like, oh my God, they don't even care about BMO as like a conscious being. They're just like instantly trying to turn them off. Like the parents, like really turned me off from the parents, Mr. M, Hugo. Like these people are very cruel.
Well, and I would point out that like our introduction to the parents is Y5 entering the room. It's like, hey, I brought you stuff, and they like don't acknowledge her at all. They just acknowledge the products,
Exactly.
which is like, hey, like she's helping you out with your whole deal. Like, you're
Like,
just
can
gonna
you give her
ignore
a
she
cookie
exists?
or something? Like, something.
Yeah, so I agree with Michelle that like I think the special that does a good enough job of like showing why they're acting the way they are, but I also think that they are kind of hammering in that there's a little bit of cruelty going on, especially in the early parts of the special. But it's a difficult a difficult life they live up there in the drift. We can dig in a little bit more on Y5. Like she is the main new character we're introduced to here. I get the sense that the general consensus is we all like her here.
Yes.
Is anything that we haven't touched on Y5 that you think like is worth highlighting here, Michelle?
Sorry, it just started raining really loud, so apologies if you can hear it. Honestly, like, I really liked Way5's voice, and I liked that she was a girl bunny, and she was sort of the other protagonist of the show, with BMO. Like, it's kind of, because, like, she's the one who ends up being the leader at the end. BMO kind of leaves when they realize that like she's at a point now where she can help fix her own people's society, and she doesn't need him there to like guide it anymore. Because like for the whole rest of the episode, it's like, I gotta fix BMO, like I gotta find BMO. They're the only one people will listen to. But by the end, like they're listening to her, and even her parents are listening to her, and like it's gonna be okay because like her hands are very capable too, and she's gonna figure it out. And I kind of like that she had her own mini arc there too, like going from like someone who like literally just found things for the approval of her parents to somebody who was more or less like leading this like 2.0 version of the Drift Society.
Yeah, I feel like we were talking about the parents and like them being products of society. I feel like that definitely applies to Y5 too early on.
Yeah.
And she is like a pretty in the first half has an arc of like BMO basically instilling empathy in her, and that's like really, it's just like really fun to watch and see her grapple and ultimately go with BMO. And then you see her kind of being this more empathetic figure in the second half, and that works really well. And then her grappling with that versus her old identity. And I drew a lot of comparisons between this and Infinity Train Book 2. Like Y5 and Lake, and then I think you can also the other thing you want to compare it to, I think, is the parents stuff, the abuse that she has. Like I feel like you want to compare that to a She-Ra type thing. So I was definitely thinking of other shows with stuff was going on with Y5.
It's a cult. It's still a cult. Capitalism is a cult.
Wow.
And
it is a cult of money, and who really benefits? Very few.
Hugo has a lot of cult leader
Hugo,
attributes, so.
Seahorde Prime? Is that what we're gonna fully?
Yes, that's what the H stands for.
but then we're like stereotyping aliens there with like pale faced aliens.
Yeah, he's not really an alien though. You know, he
pretend
appropriated.
to look that way? Yeah. That was part of his backstory that just I was so like uncomfortable with. It's like he's a legit human, and then he changed his appearance to fit in with this new colony of people. It's like, yo, that's so messed up, though.
I have to watch this again. That's so gross.
I know, it's so gross.
Yeah, they use the word biohacking, which is a totally new word to the world of Adventure Time. But you know, I think the message gets across in that sequence. Also, just briefly, Michelle mentioned she liked Y5's voice. That's Glory Kurda, a relatively young actress. She's in the Final Fantasy VII remake that I hear is popular these days. So
clearly, this means I have to play the game now.
Ali, do you have any thoughts on particularly the identity arc that Y5 goes through? It's not that much, but there is some stuff going on there. I don't know how you felt about that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was adorable that when she was coming up with her name. And I do I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be, it is a pun on Wi-Fi, right?
Probably.
It has to be, especially in that
If
universe.
you say it really fast, it sounds like Wi-Fi, so sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I thought it was, not that it was like handled poorly or well, but like just BMO's like, that your name sucks. You should come up with a new one. I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about that, but then she doesn't like it either, clearly. I'll call you Harmonica. I don't like that one. I thought it was nice. I also kind of thought that the parents accepting it immediately at the end felt a little rushed, but it also does kind of make sense after you strip away the societal norms that they've thought about. No, I don't have any complaints. And it was like definitely akin to Lake from Infinity Train. I was thinking of another one, and now I forgot about it, but I think those two are like the ones that stand out most in my mind in terms of animation representation.
Mm-hmm. We're going from Y4 to Y5 on the name is a very like Adventure Time take.
So funny, right? It's like, oh, I'll have it. Okay, I got it. Instead of Y4, Y5.
What if she said Y3?
That's a step backwards.
Yeah,
Y5 is upgrade.
I guess like that's just culturally like they're all their names are like letters and numbers or something. I don't know.
I'm also impartial to it because 5 is my lucky number.
Her mom's
maybe as they,
which is also just like characters and numbers.
Yeah, characters. Yeah, maybe as they strip away the identity suppressing capitalism that was plaguing them, they can rediscover their identities and have more complex names.
She's gonna name herself Wi-Fi. Let it happen.
And she invents Wi-Fi, and that's the backstory of Wi-Fi.
That's the backstory of Wi-Fi. We found it.
That's how their society comes up again. Also, I need a refresher. Like, how are they planning to actually fix the hub or whatever if Hugo took every resource they had. I didn't understand that at all.
So he didn't take all of them. He took the best ones. So I think their plan is like they do have some resources left, and they did say something about like going to that trash place and maybe scavenging more aggressively
where the
there.
robot was.
But
Okay.
like, I think it's implied that like all these different groups like may have things that are useful, and they're going to have to pool resources if they have any hope of actual survival. So they'll still be scrimping by, but it'll be like a collective, organizative kind of scrimping by instead of an every person for themselves thing.
Yeah, I like that.
Like before.
I just definitely missed that. I was like, wait, how do they expect to survive? But that makes sense.
It was very fast at the end. Just
Yeah,
the last
really,
5 minutes.
They
all
don't
this
eat the
talk
lards. Hopefully not.
Yeah,
They need nourishment.
man.
That was the thing I remembered most from Adventure Time. Like they're there,
joking,
right?
Yeah. The sea lards are
Yeah.
a very
I
fun
did
part
not
of Adventure
remember.
Time.
Where are they in Adventure Time? I don't remember that.
But they just like
I-
fly in the sky sometimes.
Yeah.
Like
They're
lot
in
of-
impervious space, though. When it landed in Earth, it was shooting down like a rocket. Like, a fire doesn't hurt it. The coldness of space don't hurt them. It's like alive. That really shocked me. They can do anything. They're the cockroaches of the future.
Ugh.
Nothing
We're
can
gonna be
kill
eating
them.
cockroaches.
they're much cuter than cockroaches.
They are.
let's
They're
be-
way better, but like the same rules apply apparently.
Very Adventure Time that it's like this like kind of weird looking thing that is like just behaves very cutely, and then at the end, I like at the end I'm Twinkle Toes. Like that was good.
I just want to mention, there's a very popular episode of Adventure Time, Jake the Brick, that stars a sea lard. So like,
Oh, I don't
Okay,
remember them.
Alex, the one Adventure Time episode that was on my mind most watching this the first time was the BMO, I feel like the last BMO backstory episode, the one where we see the creator of the BMOs, we see the other AMO, BMO, CMO. So I was like trying to remember that and how it fit into anything that was happening, and I don't think there was anything specific that would was supposed to be remembered to tie in. I mean, we had the Seago, and I don't even remember if that was in that episode or not.
I believe this is Seago's debut, and another thing that we kind of have to discuss among like people who know Adventure Time more is that it turns out this is a prequel. So like, just like the whole like reshifting of knowledge, like once you say at the end, like, oh, all this happened before in that Finn and Jake, like that's kind of like it's like a whole empty hole in the lore of BMO. So like, of course it makes sense that you put it there so that way anything could happen for him. But yeah, like, I don't really think there's much of BMO history that connects here. Like, even the thing, like, at the beginning where he's apparently been sent into space to go farm potatoes on Mars, like, that's just nonsense, right?
What do you
What's
mean
his-
about sent into space? I thought he just decided that on his own.
It's unclear.
I thought that,
I mean, it's unclear,
he
right?
was already a full-fledged
Just- it's-
person
it's
who
like-
needs
it's
him
just
in the prequel still.
Yeah, it's just the Martian joke with
Was
potatoes
his
on
creator?
Mars. Like,
He lived on Earth, right?
Yes.
Do
So
we
he
know
left
that
Earth only to
creator?
just go back to Earth.
all right, I was trying to fit it in
Oh,
with that
that's
episode.
strange.
I don't even know, but
Well,
I mean, yeah, because
it's-
Earth is the only place you'd find potatoes. I guess it did have to come from Earth.
Yeah, and like I believe there's something with like Mo sending BMO out into the world to like be his own person, basically.
Right,
And
that I
so,
remember.
So like, I guess this fits.
But he left
I-
Earth and then he just goes back in the end. Didn't he still want to go to Mars? Why? It's
He
frustrating.
needs a new
past the
ship.
I want to see the potato farm.
I assumed it was a prequel. Watching it, I don't know. I just like it
Mhm.
felt like that, but I didn't expect it to connect right to Finn and Jake at the end. But I thought that was a cute ending to the special.
Right. And while we're on the topic of BMO, obviously BMO in general in the show has been a comedic effect character. Like there's character stuff that happens with BMO, but it usually doesn't like stretch into other episodes. But this special, BMO is like the titular character, but there's not too much going on with this character, except like there's like a small arc going on where like he's envisioning himself as a cowboy, and then he like has doubt in the middle, talking about like being a sidekick and feeling like a kid, and then he gets his confidence back. But like I just want to ask, do you guys think that BMO what's the word here? Is BMO mirroring Y5 character in this episode, or is this its own thing? Like, what's your interpretation on what's going on with BMO here? Allie, do you have any thoughts on?
Well, I think he definitely is supposed to mirror her in a way, because not that like they feel like a kid because of like what other people put on them, but they can feel that way just because of others' influence. It also was a little weird to me that he felt that way, BMO at least, because I didn't really understand at first why the people who he initially meets are like, yeah, fix our society, and he's like sort of an authority figure. But now to me it feels like a class thing. Like maybe people who are like higher ranking look to Hugo, but everybody else was like, we need like a leader who knows how to actually help us. I don't know. I feel like there had to be stuff like this in the original series where he kind of like made jokes about being a kid or something like that. But I don't want to say it felt out of place, because it didn't really, but it did feel a little like strange. I don't think it was handled poorly, but I was like, oh, this is where we're going? All right, why not?
Okay. Michelle, do you have any thoughts on the BMO character in this special?
I mean, I'm trying to remember what BMO was like in the show, and I feel like BMO was the same.
Take it from the perspective of you are only watching this special. How would you feel about BMO?
That is impossible, but I will say, like, I think the nice thing about BMO is even if BMO has these moments of crisis where they feel like, oh, am I too much like a kid? Like, am I not, like, prepared enough or mature enough to follow this plan through? That's not something BMO normally, like, tends to deal with. And I love that insight that he would have this kind of grappling with himself. But again, the great thing about BMO is because BMO's a robot and is inherently genderless, BMO can kind of do what they want. You know, like, they're not tied to, like, human expectations of, like, how you're supposed to be. Like, BMO doesn't, like, grow up in the way that a human child grows up. Like, BMO's not Finn. BMO's not Jake. BMO's BMO. So, like, really, BMO can't ever really be wrong, because what BMO is just so completely out of, like, the realm of, like, how we understand those kinds of things. So I feel like it's nice to see BMO have all these human emotions, and that's something Y5 really responds to. That BMO has, like, very much his own personality, but BMO's, like, shouldn't be held to the same standard. And I think, like, we forget that because BMO feels like such a human character sometimes, but then BMO will do things that feel very, like, kind of out of nowhere. But it's because, like, BMO's a robot. BMO's constantly reinventing themselves. And I feel like that's, like, what's fun about that as a character. So, like, BMO felt the same, but also, like, I was really worried when BMO looked like he was going to be, like, destroyed. But then at the same time, I was like, well, you know, BMO's, like, also a robot, though, so maybe they can just put it back together.
He could put himself back together even after he's dead.
I do think Adventure Time's good about, like, they always can, like, really delve in, like, existential's the best word for it, but, like, as a viewer, it just leaves me feeling very thoughtful and a little, like, sad. And I feel like that was the moment that really hit me the most in that kind of very Adventure Timey way. Just like when BMO's talking to themselves, you have all the rainbow versions of BMO, like, encircling the BMO to talk about, like, oh, not this time, no, I think you're dead for real. And BMO kind of, like, has to have peace with it. And even though BMO comes back, it's like, maybe that's just what it's like being BMO. Like, any day could be your last day, but then maybe it's not because you're a robot. So, like, maybe don't worry too much about anything because you're a work in progress and you literally have no rules because you're not human.
Wow. I'm going to identify as a robot from now on.
I know, right?
I like that mindset.
It feels so freeing in a way.
It does, yeah.
Thanks for breaking down the existentialism of BMO getting destroyed. I will also say, like, on top of, like, the special does give him this this death, but at the same time, I appreciate that it doesn't lose like the optimism that is kind of his signature throughout the show. Like no matter what, BMO is just always thinking like best case scenario, and I like having that energy throughout this special. Dylan, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on BMO as a character in this episode.
Yeah, not too much. I mean, just I liked BMO as a protagonist here. I think I connected more with BMO than I really ever did on the show. I thought it was really successful. I love one of my favorite things in the special is Sheriff BMO and Deputy Y5. Really, really love that.
Deputy Y5.
I know. She's like, I don't think I'm a deputy or anything. Like, oh my god. The BMO we mentioned, but BMO talking to football. I feel like that's something.
Yeah, was that
more
an
interesting
original
BMO
series thing? I feel like I remember that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that felt familiar from before. So I thought that was used to good effect too with BMO.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even BMO as a cowboy is a thing that the show had already done. Like,
oh yeah.
We had an old
Give me your bank account.
Yeah. Speaking of that scene where he's getting destroyed, and like we get the replay of him getting torn apart and put together and torn apart, which I will say like hurt me a lot.
It's illegal.
It's illegal.
But I'd say that's one of the showier animation pieces of this special, and in general, I think it's worth noting just like how clean this all looks and how like the differences between this and regular Adventure Time. Like we also, I mean, from the get-go, you have this special intro for the BMO episode, which is like a 3D exploration inside BMO's body, and you get to the Golden Heart, and like that alone is like immediately puts it like, oh, okay, this is different. You got the animator from Water Park Prank, not especially a popular episode, but
I don't remember that episode.
That animator came back to do the flashback of like how Hugo got to the drift, so like that was a unique style, and just in general, like all these new settings that we had to create. Dylan, I don't know if there's anything especially that stood out to you in terms of just like the look of the show.
Yeah, I really like the different style for the flashback. I love Michelle mentioned the rainbow BMO colors. I really love that scene, how that looked, everything evolving there. Yeah, I mean, I think like it shows that this was like almost the whole Adventure Time crew coming back just for this. Also, I think this directed by Mickey Brewster, the special. I mean, like so many talented people on working on this, and this is like visually, I think one of the highlights of the year for me.
Okay. Ali, Michelle, any visual highlights that you guys want to point out?
Not that haven't been pointed out already. I was also just really impressed with how clean everything looked, but it's been reiterated multiple times.
Yeah, I just think like the background detail something you notice a lot as it goes on, and it always like just looks really professional and really good with the high quality to detail. That's just like really nice because they had the time to do it, and they really didn't hold back in that respect. So like it all felt like it made sense for the world, but like it stood out in its own right for just like how good it was.
We don't know like if they're experimenting with formats for the other episodes, do we? Like in terms of animation?
I don't know.
So I'm kind of
I don't think we really know much of anything. Yeah, I think on the AMA, I saw Adam vaguely mentioned that they might slightly have a thread tying them together, but it's not confirmed. They're all backstories or even so. I think it's mostly up in the air.
That's my other question. So good.
Yeah, like also we gotta. If this is a prequel, like like is that going to be post or free?
From the description, it feels like post. But
yeah, when
the
they
hard
first
thing with
meet
they were together before and together, so like anything could.
Oh my god, are we gonna get their first girlfriend story?
It'd be so good because we've had hints about it. That part I do remember watching it. When they had like the backstory, and I forget, like, did they use like bugs or gum or something to represent their past? But
oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it seems like Princess Bubblegum, like, Marceline met her, and she was, like, there's, like, a weird history to, like, how she was formed out of bubblegum, and, like, that's a whole thing. But Marceline met her when she was still human, presumably, and she turned into a vampire later? Right? I don't really remember anymore, but I feel like, yeah, I'd love to see what that actually looked like.
You should probably watch Stakes if you're really
Definitely.
into this. But
I can't believe you haven't watched Stakes, Michelle.
I forgot it was a thing. There are like 3 miniseries in Adventure Time.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Stakes is
was
the
the
game
first
one.
one, and the
Stakes,
Oh, okay.
stakes and Islands, I think, are pretty high
Yeah.
priority stuff for this show. Yeah.
Speaking of like stuff from the original show, one character we haven't really talked about that much is Mr. M. Michelle gave her take on it, but as someone who like didn't really recall the original, if you watch Adventure Time and you recognize voices, you can pretty much tell that this is Martin Murden's Finn's dad.
Wait,
from
what?
Yeah.
What? Why is he so creepy here?
Well,
He's
if
creepy
you,
in the original too.
Oh yeah, he
Yeah.
is creepy in the original too.
Well,
Yeah, that's
Ali,
true.
I think you caught on to this during your watch. How did you know with the Martin knowledge? Does that like add anything to Mr. M's character in here, or you think it doesn't really matter? Like, what are your feelings on it?
I don't know if it adds anything to his character, but it definitely adds like perspectives from the viewers, the audience rather, because it just added so much anger for me because I always hated Martin. He was always a sleazeball, and here he's like being a creepy, like hiding behind a mask sleazeball. I hate him so much. I thought, I mean, it doesn't really take away anything if you don't watch the original, but it does add if you do know him from Adventure Time. I also feel like that about just a bunch of like tiny things, like the card game that they play. Like that was the card game that Jake showed Finn, I believe. But with this, I don't know. I think it's good that they put him in here as like the really gross, like I'm gonna steal all of your stuff, dude. But yeah, I hate him, and I hate him even more now. So I mean, they definitely achieved what they were going for. So that's a good thing.
I guess I'm too much of a casual. I didn't even pick up it was him the first viewing. I mean, I know that's despicable, but then second viewing, like I watched with that in mind, and it's really the same exact plot. I think it maybe just adds it's like knowledge of where he might have been before and where he's going after. So you don't need to tie that up as much.
It's just a weird nostalgia thing for like original fans. But
it does make you not like him more if you know it.
Yeah. Because, like, I'll just say, having known that, when BMO meets Finn at the end, Finn's literally a baby. He's like a toddler infant. So it's like, while his dad's off being a creepo in space, like, his literal child son is just running around on Earth.
with a dog.
With a dog. A teenager dog. Apparently, Jake is a cool teenager with the mohawk.
Magical alien dog.
Yeah, I'll admit I got mad when Mr. M hustled Y5 out of her anti-gravity boots.
Yeah, that
Yeah, that really
the
sucks.
rage that went through me.
And like that's such a Martin thing to do.
And then he just tries to like peace out at the end. Like
Just grab
I
on
hate
the
him.
ship.
I
Yeah.
hate him so much.
Yeah. So Mr. M is oddly enough the most connected character. Well, besides BMO, the most connected character to previous Adventure Time lore. Any like other random characters we haven't discussed? The Looter Bugs,
Yes.
Sweetie and Darling, as they're named in the
Best
credits, voiced by Ashley and Anthony Birch. Any thoughts on their contributions to the episode, Ali?
They're the best. They're the best. I'm just an Ashley Birch stan, but they were very funny. They had a lot of good one-liners that I'm blanking on now, but it was good.
Is this possibly Anthony Birch's first VO role credit?
That was what I also assumed,
Yeah.
but
I don't know.
I'll look him up.
Yeah,
Let's look him up, see what he's done.
I know they
Time
did
to
like
stop.
web series stuff with Ashley Birch a while ago, but I don't know what else they've done. But yeah, so we
He
have
has
that.
his own website. It has stuff I've worked on is the first thing that comes up when you type it.
Oh,
Does
that's
his credit
nice.
go to Darling or Sweetie? Because that was a very contested thing with us.
Oh yeah. Oh,
ago.
he's Sweetie. Okay.
Hey,
There we go.
Sweetie!
But I still want to know.
Okay,
which
but
is
in
it.
the show, which one is Sweetie and which one
That
is
was what I was-
Darling?
Okay, now that's a good follow-up question. We don't know that either.
He's
The
on a lot of
bugs-
board game stuff, but that seems like the extent. And
The bugs
Borderlands.
just felt like very much like Adventure Time characters to me. It's like
Yeah, they
okay,
did.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
checks out.
Yeah, and you have CGO or Seago, voiced by Simone Gertz, who's the queen of crappy robots on YouTube. So perfect role for her. But yeah, she's that character like sings the theme song to Frasier at some point, which is like this whole trend of like citing sitcoms from the '90s in animation is like a weird thing to me. But
it's so good though.
I mean, it's good, but it's also like. Man.
We're not quite old enough for it to be nostalgic in the way that the writers and boarders it probably is for them. I think that's it.
I guess.
They're OG millennials. It's for the older people watching.
Yeah.
In one of the best episodes of the show, they said which old show's theme do they sing? Right, like it's like a key element.
Oh yeah, Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers. Yeah.
Oh wow,
like
this seems like a very
Adventure
Gen
Time
X thing.
And then what was the song from this one that the robot is singing? Because is that from an actual show?
Yeah, it's from Frasier.
Oh,
yeah,
Frasier.
that's Frasier.
Sorry, you said that.
Is Frasier a spin-off to Cheers? I think it is.
Wow, it all connects.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen it either.
You didn't connect anything.
So yeah, any other stuff that we haven't talked about or final thoughts about the special?
Olive.
Wrapping up.
Olive discussion.
Okay, Dylan, how much do you love Olive then?
A lot. Is Olive going to be in all the specials? Like, is Olive our connective tissue?
Olive's the new snail. That's what you're saying.
Wow. Is Olive? Yeah. Apparently, they didn't really put the snail in this time.
Well, no, but did it remind anybody else of the cursed sword just because of the eye, but also because it could like shapeshift? Could the sword shapeshift, or am I making that up?
I love that it shapeshifts. Olive can be anything: an axe, a floating scooter board thing, a Pokemon. I mean, that's why Dylan likes it. Olive looks like
Pokemon.
A Pokemon.
I guess it's a ditto.
Thinking of
yeah, there you go. I
Magneto.
knew you'd have one ready.
Not Magneto.
The only one that turns into a bunch of stuff.
Which is that? Magneton? I don't
I was
remember.
thinking of Magneton. That's a first gen Pokemon, so I actually know what that one looks like.
I have no idea what any of you are talking about. But Olive scans BMO at the beginning and is I get what did Olive see? I guess the golden hearts and is like, oh, that's enough, or like
all the inner content. Yeah.
All the inner contents of BMO.
Yeah, BMO's like you have good taste. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but BMO doesn't get eyed up like that usually. Olive, any other characters I'm missing, or is that it? I guess just briefly, I do want Finn and Jake at the end. Jake has like an earring and some like mohawk situation going on.
He's a teenager.
Was that Teen Jake? I need some Teen Jake content.
Or is it Teen Jake?
I think
Maybe
it's
that's
definitely
what the fourth
Teen
one will
Jake.
be.
The fourth one's Teen Jake.
Jake.
A little fan with his blushing cheeks.
I know, so cute.
And he has a duck on his shirt.
Duck on his shirt.
And
He's
the
so
sword
round.
is too big for him.
And a band-aid on his knee because he's a scrappy baby.
Jake is wearing a plaid shirt. I'm a fan.
I really like his bleached mohawk. That's my favorite part about Teen Jake.
Yeah.
So
Credits are real life BMO in space. Like BMO that they apparently sent in a rocket somewhere. So good.
Did they really?
BMO. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, any other final thoughts, Dylan, on the special?
My small note. I really like Randall Park as Hugo. I was trying to see like what other voice work I've seen Randall Park do. Not a lot of stuff. So I'd love to see him doing more voice work in the future. I thought he did really well as Hugo. Just in general, like I think I may be a little bit higher on it than some of you, but like I was really blown away by this. Like coming into this, I didn't think that there was any chance I would like the BMO special more than the Bubbling special, but now I'm like, how could it be better? Like this is basically as good as it gets. Like obviously I'll be more emotionally connected to the
We all know how it will
but
be.
like for me this is like what way? In the gay way? Like
Obviously in the gay way.
Obviously. So I hope now I'm saying like I hope the Bubbling special is as good as the BMO special. This is
it's fair. It's
so
fair.
far top 5 episode of TV of the year for me.
Oh,
Okay.
the amount of times you said that this year alone are more than 5. I'm just going to say that right now.
That is shockingly high, though.
There's a lot of good ones.
That's
Right up there with
shocking
the 3 shows series
Like,
finale
we
and
had
that one episode of
Kiko
TV.
and Shira, like
And then the
Alone
bad
in those
episode of
two
Country.
each, there
There's
are like
six.
definitely top fives for the year.
I've got it in
Yeah.
my top 15 for what it's worth. But,
Yeah,
That's good
I feel
too.
like
that's still like really great for like the there was a high ceiling and there was a low floor for this. So like I'm really happy that it was
That's
closer
fair.
to the ceiling.
That's true. That's a good point. There's so much good content out this year so far.
Yeah. Ali, any final thoughts on BMO?
I mean, I didn't really like it until we had this discussion. I mean, I did enjoy it, but now I really want to just watch it again to go back about all the stuff that I missed that you guys marked on. I really liked all the one-liners, not even just like the one-liners, like where Martin is like kids always like they're just like their deadbeat parents. Oh no, always telling off their deadbeat parents. That made me laugh really hard. And I think my favorite quote from the whole thing, and just to like as a nugget for everybody going through terrible things right now, it's even when things look really stupid, we have to try. That was like the whole episode just felt too real, and I appreciated it. It's very relevant to current times.
Yeah, we can't just like go through every joke that BMO does, but like BMO has like a lot of good lines in this episode.
But it's BMO.
I related to BMO most when he was excited that Wi-Fi was a rabbit.
I know! They say like a couple times, like, oh, there's so many rabbits.
Yeah,
oh,
but
they're so
BMO's like,
cute."
oh, that one rabbit's running a hotel. I was like,
Yeah.
that's
Like,
Michelle.
waiting
But
for
that,
Wi-Fi to get like, insulted by how patronizing that sounds. She just let it go. She didn't even care that BMO was saying all this stuff about rabbit
This
people.
is Michelle about Amphibia, honestly. It's
Oh my
BMO.
God. Could you imagine like if this was like cats instead of bunnies? It'd be just.
Oh my God. Yeah, everyone was screaming.
Then I'd like hate Hugo 10 times more, so it's probably a good thing.
are there cat people in somewhere new?
There
I
has
don't know.
There's at this point, there's been 10 seasons, Dylan. There's probably
Yeah,
animal
there's-
people of every
You're
sort.
supposed to be able to tell me off the top of your head, Alex. Though. That's nice.
She's the registered expert of Adventure Time. It's true.
But Michelle, besides bunnies, any final thoughts on the special?
I like really didn't know what to. Honestly, for some reason, I was even wondering if the character designs were going to be like different or something for this. And I think they look exactly the same. It feels exactly the same as the show. I really, just based on not knowing even that, I didn't have many expectations, especially like not really knowing the last 5 seasons worth of plot of the show. I was just like, I'm excited. Everyone's excited. I'm gonna watch it. I think having this discussion helped me understand a little more of the context for where this fits in terms of like other characters, like Finn's dad. Like I really like. I want to rewatch just to like understand his grossness in like a new light now, because I think that like helps to know that stuff. But like as a standalone, I think it works really good, and I think like honestly, I would watch a whole spin-off series of Y5, just like figuring out how to fix drift and.
Like, I know
starting,
she's probably not coming back, but I want her to.
I would love her to, right? Like she like stands out for a brand new character that we had no previous emotional attachment to. And I feel like that's kind of nice that she's gonna be memorable.
Yeah.
Is one of the two from the finale a bunny? Like one of the two new people?
Oh yeah, it's like it's something like that. Let's look it up.
Like in the
was it Shermie?
In the fight?
Oh, maybe he's a cat.
In the last episode of Adventure Time.
I'm looking it up. I'm trying to find visual images here.
Yeah, I'm like Wi-Fi, Shermie.
It's like a bunny cat hybrid. It's a gremlin looking thing. Yeah, it's got this big wide smile, but it's got bunny ears and like a little rat tail. I have no idea what it is.
I will say Adventure Time wiki is really detailed, and they have an article for cats in Adventure Time. Actually, there was a BMO episode where he's pretending to be a detective, and he has 2 cat detective friends. There's also Meow, of course. You know the he's the tiny cat that's trying to kill Jake in one of the earlier episodes.
Oh,
like just because he's a cat, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
He just wants to kill Jake.
and there's the bots episode where it's just like a kingdom of cats that are in boxes. That's great. I love that episode.
That sounds amazing.
That I actually remember more than the other ones. Maybe it was.
This is the gremlin that's the new Jake in the future.
Oh, that
or
right,
Finn in
right.
the future. I mean,
yeah.
he looks like a rat and a bunny and maybe a cat at the same time.
I forget which one of those is voiced by Willow Smith.
The box kitty looks so good. You gotta tell me which episode that is.
that is Bot's Prince.
I hope that's his name.
Why were there no?
Yeah, I hope that's his name too.
Why are there no princesses on the special?
Because
I don't
apparently
under-
Ooh is the only planet that uses the princess system. It's like She-Ra, right? Like just a
Yeah.
planet
Can we-
particularly has a princess system.
Can Wi-Fi be a
Earth
princess
is
if she
Red
comes
Moon
to
and
Earth? Is that how that
this
works?
is-
If she comes to Earth, but in the drift, she's just a rebel leader.
Yeah.
Does that make the
Seems
drift
pretty
a
much
horde?
the same thing.
She's smart enough to overthrow somebody with science.
She
Like,
is.
she'd
could
be
be a
really good friends with Bubblegum, honestly.
Yes,
Yeah, I
I
think
want
she
her to
could be
come
the
to
new
Ooh.
champion. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you can tell, we're like drifting off, which means it's time for us to begin wrapping up
Drifting
here.
off.
Oh yeah.
Hey,
Drift away. We're drifting away.
No,
Oh my
no.
No, we're sticking to Adventure Time. This place is called
Oh,
The
okay.
Drift, so that was the joke, okay? So you can find our
That's a good
previous
comparison.
discussion on Adventure Time and the other shows that we've discussed here at overlyanimated.com. If you have thoughts about this episode, about Adventure Time, about She-Ra, about any of the other shows we cover here on Overly Animated, you can talk with us on Discord at overlyanimated.com/Discord. You can support us financially via Patreon at patreon.com/overlyanimated. Thanks to all of our current patrons, especially our patron of the podcast, Ryan. Thanks to our Patreon executive producers, Ryan, Steve, Beatrice, Hugh, Michael, Needle, and Phonician. We will be back here to talk Adventure Time whenever Obsidian comes out. I think it's supposed to be 2020.
Yeah.
The month, who knows, but it could be
This
Christmas.
is the year for the gays. It needs to come out.
Yeah, it's the year of the gays. I agree with that.
Isn't every year the year of the
It is,
gays?
but it just
But it's never enough. That's the thing, Alex. You just
Yeah.
always need more.
gets
Yeah,
stronger
yeah.
every year.
Well, I am sure that will bring even more energy for Obsidian, but I hope you enjoyed our discussion of BMO, and we'll be back later to talk about the future of Distant Lands. But until then, talk to you later. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.